is another one of our semi-regularly unscheduled live streams. And this one comes at a very, dear Lord, come on. Fraught moment for our republic. Sorry about the lighting situation here. I'm gonna try to get the chat up on the laptop tonight. See if I can't be a little bit more professional. Hey, Mark, how you doing? Mark, I've been spending a lot of time with your co-religionists this week. I have been watching a bunch of Catholic videos about sola scriptura and the Marian dogmas. It is good. It's steel man in my my beliefs. It's challenging in that it's making me confront. It's not challenging in that it's likely to change my beliefs, but it's challenging in that, you know, I'm watching some of the bigger guys. We're gonna talk a lot about the Charlie Kirk situation. I think I've got an interest, not an interest. I've got what I think is a unique take about one aspect of the story, and of course we're going to hear a lot of what you gentlemen have to say. But we're going to wait a little while and see if some of the regulars show up before we launch into it. So let me. So those of you who can't, this isn't clickbait. We are going to get into the title. Hey, Harold. I just want to wait and let some people get here. So let me jaw at Mark here for just a second. I think I've mentioned before, Mark, that, oh, that's another Mark. Ottinger's here too. Yeah, that I listened to Pints with Aquinas going down the road to Damascus. And Matt Fradd. And I really like the podcast. It's an entertaining podcast. He's good at his job. Well, he hasn't changed my mind, but he has brought on all the other famous Catholic apologists. You know, Jimmy Akin, Trent Horn, Scott Hahn, Joe Hirschmeyer, who drives me nuts for some reason. I hope I'm not just so shallow that his lisp is what makes me not be able to listen to him. But Joe Hirschmeyer, a few other guys like that. And so I don't know how I got, it's one of my, you know, little, most of our converts. That's true, most of those guys were converts. Frad's not, but I think Aiken and Trent Horn and Scott Hahn are. Although they generally don't convert from our more anyway. Seems like a lot of Reformed guys end up going Catholic. And of course, sola scriptura is the big one. If sola scriptura is, you know, right, then Catholicism is essentially wrong. Hey, Swamp Yankee. And there's some other ones too that are sorry, I'm pulling up the chat so I can actually be in the chat for this one this evening, man. It's going to just take me just a second. We are going to get to the Charlie Kirk stuff. I just don't want to get into all that and then a bunch of people show up and we got to rehash it. Because I know it's, and actually I think I'm waiting on Les. Les really wanted to be here this evening. To the point where he emailed me and and asked if I'd be sure to go live tonight. But I mean, I was planning on it anyway. Oh, shucks. Sorry about that. I don't know what that is. So I think, damn it, this isn't going to be worth it. Now they got to send me a PIN number. I should have done all this before. I don't want that. Continue. Don't do that. Just let me in. We don't watch because of your looks. So I'm kind of waiting for Les to show up. There we go. Finally got it up. Jeez. Millions shake London at Tommy's Unite the Kingdom rally. Millions? That's a lot. Okay, view your channel. Live. All right. Pause that. Let's get in the chat. All right. Start a Q&A or poll. Oh, wow, Mark says there's like 3 million at the UK rally. All right, I'm in the chat. Awesome. If anyone sees Les, let me know so I can we can start the Charlie Kirk stuff. But yeah, and sola scriptura is where the Catholics kind of have their, not kind of, they do have their best argument, because sola scriptura is by Scripture alone, which different people define different ways. But we say that we will only take our dogmas, our doctrines, the important parts of our faith from Scripture and no other source. And and if I wanted to denigrate the arguments, I would call them trolls. And they are very effective trolls, by the way. They're good trolls, but that doesn't mean they're only trolls. Well, first off, yes, the doctrine of sola scriptura is not expressly, I would say it's pretty strongly laid out in Scripture, but it's not expressly laid out in Scripture. And also the canon of Scripture isn't laid out in Scripture. And those are two very big challenges. So I've been listening to these. I can't listen to people who agree with me. People who agree with me bore me to tears. So the way I learn is listening to people who disagree with me, but then that frequently means my blood pressure is through the roof. But they are. I am coming up with an explanation of sola scriptura from arguing with these guys in my head that I'm pretty comfortable with. It's a lot of the things that they'll point to against sola scriptura, in my mind. Actually, Mark, my view on sola scriptura kind of lines up with Luther. Only things in the Bible can be required, and if the Bible isn't explicit on something, then it's an area of freedom. Hey, Ryan, how you doing, brother? Ryan, I think I have an email from you I haven't responded to. I need to go back and look at that. But it's still it's a fun little debate. It's an effective debate. It's the one where I feel like my side is the most vulnerable. Uh, so I enjoy those sorts of things. Good evening, Matthew. Uh, yeah, Luther believed in a couple of different things. I don't believe I don't think he believed in transubstantiation. I think he believed in consubstantiation, which I think, as much as transubstantiation would say that the host, the blood and the wine, are somehow transformed into the literal blood and body of Christ. And consubstantiation, I believe, says that they retain uh, their physical properties in bread and wine, but they are at the same time. Uh, oh no, that's fine, Ryan. As long as it wasn't me. Uh, so they retain their physical properties of bread and wine, but then they're also somehow at the same time the blood and body of Christ. I'm, uh, when it comes to either side, I'm not. I don't believe in transubstantiation, but it doesn't just like insult me to no end. It's fine. I tend more towards the consubstantiation view, but I also will not take communion at any church that claims that they control communion. So, like, I won't take communion at my father's. My parents are Anglicans at this point. they 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 church hop a lot. They're good people, but they church hop a lot. So right now, at this point in their lives, they're Anglicans, and I won't take communion at their church. Love their pastor; he's a good man, but the Anglicans claim to control communion, that you get the real good stuff from them, and I won't have anything to do. I won't take communion from anyone who claims that they control it, or that only their communion is legitimate. Because communion is a Passover feast for Gentiles, and so it needs to conform to that. We don't want to get into all that right now. This isn't a Catholic. But it is what I'm, chasing down. Right, it's what I'm consuming a lot of right now. So it's on my mind. Let's talk about this Charlie Kirk situation. I don't want to lead anyone astray with some clickbait and not talk about it. I don't see Les yet, but I bet he pops in a little bit later, and we can cover it when he does. I was actually hoping Isaac and Palmetto Paratrooper would be here too, but I forgot to text either one of them to say that I was going live, so why would I expect them to be able to read my mind? Did Mark just say no one watches for my looks? I just got a haircut today. Look at me. This is as good as it gets as far as looks go with this guy here. So the Charlie Kirk situation. Heartbreaking on so many levels. And this is one of those events that we might not ever fully process. I know I haven't processed it yet. It feels like a really, really big moment, and at the same time, Charlie Kirk wasn't. I mean, he was well known in political circles, but he wasn't the beloved. He wasn't a top tier. He wasn't President Trump. He wasn't Elon Musk. He wasn't J.D. Vance. In some ways, he was much more of a behind the scenes guy, as much as he was still in front of the scenes. I mean, but I've been surprised at the outpouring about it all. I heard that South Korea is doing something, that the native Hawaiians have done something, which, I mean, that they're American, so I mean it's not crazy, but still it's not the first thing you think of, Hawaiians. Here's stuff all over the place. But the part of this story that really grabbed me is, and I'm willing to talk about all this. So anything y'all want to talk about, feel free to bring up in the chat. But the part of this story that, oh wow, the UK rally were shouting his name. Yeah, Ryan, we'll talk about some of the conspiracy theories. But I want to talk about this part that really grabbed me. And this probably isn't fair. I shouldn't say fair. No, none of this is fair. But I was really, really kind of transfixed and by the shooter's father and the moral conundrum this man found himself in. Because if you look at that family, and we don't know a whole lot about the family, but in what few details we know, you guys all know. No, I mean, I don't know anything you guys don't know. Probably no less than you know. But just a little bit that's come out of this, about this family, this is one of us. This is one of our people. Hey, Landon, shalom. I kind of got the same impression a little bit out of the shooter at the Trump rally, the one who clipped him in the ear. You know, I felt like his family was maybe one of our people, some of our people. But you look at the pictures of Richardson, the Richardson family, and this is us. Hey, Isaac, I'm glad you're here. The dad looks like one of us. He's wearing one of the 1776 style T-shirts. He's taking all these family photos with his wife and his 3 boys, and they're at static displays. By the way, that picture of that kid with the 50 cal, that kid was not shooting the 50 cal. That was a static display at some kind of event. Probably the National Guard came out and set up, a few. I saw Humvee in the background, and I read some things where some leftists were like, no, this is MAGA. Look at him. He's out there shooting 50 cal machine guns. That was not a machine gun shoot. That was a static display. But this family is our people. And of course, this horrible thing has happened with their son. Did something terrible. I mean, forget about it being, involving Charlie Kirk and the political fraughtness and the betrayal they must feel at him striking at something that they probably felt strongly about. Oh wow, he had the law rocket too. I didn't see the law rocket, but I guarantee you it was the same event where he was on the 50 cal. I would be very surprised if it wasn't. So your son has done this horrible, horrible, horrible thing. The shooter's trans boyfriend turned him in at the same time. I figured the kid was gay. I figured the kid was gay. Just looking at him, he's got the. I don't have a highly developed gaydar, but looking at him, my gaydar went off. Partially because so many of these young men who do these type of crimes are gay. Many of the high-profile shootings are done by young men with gender issues. They're been caught with mascara. The Columbine guys were screwing each other. The Charleston shooter was gay. The Sandy Hook shooter had some suspicious stuff going on there. Lot of these shooters are gay. The Gabby Gifford shooter was most likely gay, or I should say having sex with men, because the they use their really weird definition of being gay to get out of having to own some of these guys. So yeah, his partner roommate is another guy transitioning to a woman. But they were talking about the death penalty for the shooter before they ever caught him. Oh, I didn't know that guy who shot up the Republican baseball game was gay. I knew he was a Bernie bro, but I didn't know he was gay. A lot of violence, a lot of the high-profile violence comes out of the gay community. Oh, the Pulse nightclub shooter, the highest, worst mass shooting in the nation's history, was done by a guy who attended the nightclub all the time. He was gay. I'm sorry, he was having sex with men. Let's not give them any. I mean, to you and me, that's gay, but let's not let them wiggle out of this. He was a closeted gay guy who was frequenting a gay nightclub and having weird sex in the bathroom. But I repeat myself. But this father, his son, his oldest boy, a lot of us are fathers of sons. All of us have been 22 years old at some point. All of us know how incredibly stupid, sorry, Isaac, 22-year-old young men can be. I think Isaac's in his early 20s still. Last time I think we talked about it, he was 21, 22. You're probably, what, 23, 24, Isaac? As a father, I'm sure he's been watching his boy go through all this, and just his heart's breaking. So Isaac's 25 now. 25, you're kind of coming out of it. He's been watching his boy for these last few years. His heart's breaking, and all he's clinging to is, he's young. Maybe he'll come out of it. Maybe he'll come out of it. And then this boy comes to him and says, "Dad, I shot Charlie Kirk." And what do you do? As a father, what do you do? His life is over no matter what. Do you tell him to turn himself in when you know they're going after the death penalty? Just what do you do as a father? I can't even begin to resolve that issue in my head. I think about one of my boys is 21, and the others, I have 8 sons, but the 2 oldest ones are on either side of that. Hey, Luke. Of that age. I think the one boy's 25 and the other boy's 21. And what do you do? How, as a father, do you resolve this? I don't know. I don't know that we'll ever hear from this dad. I would one day. I know there's no way he could. Hey, Buck. There's no way right now he could even begin to talk about it. I mean. But one day I would be, I don't even have the right word, but just intensely focused on hearing his story. Yeah, Luke, daughters are their own special little thing. Hey, ETS, good to see you, sir. I just can't even imagine what this father's thinking while his dad, and you know what? I'm sure he'd seen the picture. Well, maybe he hadn't seen the pictures at that point. But your son is dead. He's essentially dead. How do you help him? What do you do? Heartbreak is. Fortunately, I haven't had too much what I would call heartbreak. I've had some hard moments. There's a little bit of heartbreak, but it's been restored for the most part. Which reminds me, I need to text my oldest daughter. I don't know. To me, that was the most. There's no word that doesn't minimize it. So I'm sorry. I'm just going to use language that isn't good enough. But to me, that was the most transfixing part of the story as it unfolded. Uh, some of the rest of the story, like when I first heard it, one of my daughters texted me and said they shot Charlie Kirk. And, we didn't know that he was dead yet. And I was very, very sad to hear it because he's such a young man and he's such a dynamic young man and he was so talented. Hey, Les. We were just talking about you earlier, hoping you were going to show up. And it was a tragedy, but I was hopeful he was going to live. And then of course it came out that he didn't. He was dead, and he died in front of his 3-year-old daughter. And now this young mother's got to try to explain to her 3-year-old daughter, where's daddy? And how do you do that? And it's not like she's the first mother in the history of the world who's had to explain something hard to the kids. But it was just so senseless. Outside of that, though, I wasn't surprised. I won't watch the video. Mark just said someone send the video. I won't watch the video. I won't watch the video of that poor young woman who got her throat slashed in Charlotte either. I can't keep having all these images in my head. At some point I have to. I understand. Some people say, look, you gotta watch it. You gotta internalize it. I don't need to watch it to internalize it. I stopped watching stuff like that after I saw Black Hawk Down because I was so tore up and so angry, and I literally wanted to kill people after watching Black Hawk Down. I scared myself. I was just so upset doesn't begin to enraged. So like I didn't see Zero Dark 30. I think that's the one. What's the one about Benghazi? Is it Zero Dark 30? I can't do that stuff to myself anymore. I didn't watch the Trump shooting video for a very, very long time until I just happened across it without meaning to. The 13th hour. Hey, Bob Noxious, I don't recognize your screen name, but welcome to the chat, sir. We appreciate it. I can't do it. As disappointed as I was, or not disappointed, as devastated as I wasn't surprised. We saw what happened with Trump. They tried twice. I'm pretty sure that kid was gay too, by the way. The first one who actually nicked him. He had a noodle arm soy boy look about him. Hey, Dean Mullis. Lance Corporal Veterans here. I wasn't surprised. This has been coming for a while now. And it was only a matter of time. I'm not sure why this one feels different. The shot they took at Trump, the Butler kid, that's on lockdown. Just like the Las Vegas shooting that we'll never hear the rest of. Uh, I, I don't know why this shooting feels so much worse than the Trump shooting. I mean, maybe it's because Trump. We all know everyone hates Trump. Trump derangement syndrome is a meme, and the way they talk about Trump, you, you know, I guess it wasn't surprising, but a good decent man died that day too. Now, obviously, he didn't have the platform Kirk did, but I believe he was a firefighter, father, a couple of daughters, good husband. I mean, I'm sure he wasn't the perfect man. I mean, none of us want our internet search histories being released on Fox News. Uh, but a good decent man died that day, and someone took a shot at at the president, and it wasn't as big a deal as I thought it should have been. We all kind of were like a little up in arms about it, rah rah, fight, fight, fight. But it wasn't the outrage that that I'm seeing and feeling, and I'm talking about myself here too. I'm not pointing fingers over this Charlie Kirk thing. Like, this Charlie Kirk thing hits harder than the Trump shooting did, even though the Trump shooting had all the elements of the Kirk shooting. Uh, Good solid family man died. An attempt at violence on a conservative icon. Uh, the failures at the Trump rally and Butler should have been a way bigger deal than limited security for a Charlie Kirk rally with 3,000 people at it. But it hits. And it has scared the living hell out of the leftist leadership class. The Pod Save America bros, or as I say, Pod Sank America bros, they weren't too rattled. I listened to them today. Cenk Uygur looked rattled. Now, Cenk Uygur is a excellent actor. So I don't know for sure if he was acting or not, but he's very, very, very good at acting. So he could have been acting. And I watched some of the Bulwark today too, and they also were freaked out. You could tell. Now they're freaked out because they think that there could be retaliation. They're freaked out because they're worried that this means they're not going to get back into power. They're yeah, Isaac, I think that's the one I saw, and I just couldn't tell. Because I'm just not smart enough to know for sure what he's doing. He's better at this than I am. But his response did hit all the right notes. But he looked freaked out, and the Bulwark guys looked freaked out. But they were all blaming us. First off, they just straight up, some of them were like, oh, this guy's MAGA, this guy's MAGA. Look at him with the 50 cal, look at him with the 50 cal, he's MAGA. And they were even, trying to, the Bulwark especially, were like, oh, all this fake news has come out. This stuff about the bullets being engraved is a lie. It's not true. Of course, that is true. But it was all Trump's fault. And it was all, the right has to lower its rhetoric. The right has to lower its heat. This is what happens when fascists, they're still saying the same stupid shit. This is what happened when fascists, and authoritarians take over. And they're still blaming the victim. And they keep doing this stupid shit where they kept trying to say January 6th. I swear to God, I kid you not, everyone except for Cenk, uh, uh, yeah, Cenk is interesting. There's some things I like about Cenk, just as far as like he's a rogue and he's kind of an honest rogue. And then of course he's very, very dangerous. That Anna Kasparian, I don't know what the hell she's up to, but you know, Cenk I feel like is kind of honest in his dishonesty. Uh, right. They're trying to say the shooter was far right. Uh, and then they started talking about those shootings back in Minnesota where the state legislatures were killed. And they were trying to pin that on us. But those people were killed by a leftist for not being left enough. And they were trying to do this really dishonest, deceitful whataboutism. And it was January 6th, and it was the Minneapolis, Minnesota stuff. Oh yeah, Isaac, Anna is on the hot crazy matrix. So I don't. They don't want to de-escalate, and these are the alleged centrists. Pod Sank America is like the squishy liberal reformers. Center left people. They're not even the well. They don't claim they are. They actually have moved very far left, but they pretend like they're the centrist. Wow. Yes, ETS. That guy had all kinds. He had all these pamphlets in his vehicle for a left-wing rally he was trying to get people to come to. We are not the same. And they're trying to act like this is a both sides problem. And they tried to pin the Paul Pelosi bullshit on us. That was the other one. I think it was Pod Sank America who was saying that. Oh, this guy almost killed Paul Pelosi and he was trying to kidnap Nancy Pelosi with a hammer. But it's not. This is insane. This is insane. And the fact that they think someone's dumb enough to believe this stuff. Yeah, Bella Ciao was engraved on the casings, which I didn't know what that was until just recently, but it's an Italian fascist song. Or no, I'm sorry, it's an Italian anti-fascist song. I'm sorry. And one of the other bullets had, "Hey fascist, catch this" engraved on it. And then some kind of furry reference. This is leave us not forget. This is a disturbed young man. This is not someone who's sane. But you have to kind of be insane to go along with this transgender foolishness. Lance Corporal Veteran, I have a question about that. He says the modern Mauser 98 hunting rifles are expensive rifles that young men either got it secondhand or a family member. So I have two questions about this. Allegedly, he said on his Discord that he had to go to a drop point to pick up the rifle. So that tells me it was supplied by a second party. But my next question is, the Mauser style action has used in most bolt action rifles. So is this just being described as a Mauser style action? Like the M1903 is a Mauser style action. I think most bolt action rifles are a Mauser style action. So I'm wondering if this was just a Mauser style bolt action and then someone, glommed onto that word and they're assuming it's a Mauser rifle. Or is it really a Mauser rifle? I haven't heard the truth of that yet. Mark's saying it was a rebarreled rifle, which sort of implies that it's a sporterized 98K or K98. So that's that's interesting. Yeah, I knew Mauser was still around. See, there is so much about this that tells me that you're not going to be able to convince me that this wasn't a leftist terrorist cell, an Antifa terrorist cell. You're not going to convince me this kid was working alone. Now, I do not believe. Okay, Bob Noxious. That makes some sense. That he had dropped he had pre-staged the rifle himself, and he had to go pick it up from his drop point. Okay, that is another way to look at that. That would possibly that it could be interpreted that he was acting alone. You still won't convince me that the guy there with the pellet rifle wasn't involved. Isaac is saying the scope turrets were pushed up against the scope rings. That could have happened. I'm assuming he dropped the rifle off the roof before he jumped. And that could have happened when it impacted the ground, because he didn't appear to have jumped with the rifle. I did see the video of him running away. I didn't watch the video of the shooting, but I watched the video of him running away. But it sure seems like the old man who got arrested first was staged on purpose as a distraction. Now, I've also heard Guns Coast to Coast is here. Isaac did see footage where he threw the rifle off the roof before running away. So right now it's going to be very hard for anyone to convince me that there wasn't, collusion going on here, that we didn't have some. Hey, Boo Radley, we haven't seen you in a while, sir. That we didn't have some coordination, and we don't have some, silly people thinking that there's some hardcore leftist revolutionary cell who are doing it's called propaganda by deed. Is one of the things they call it. I'm not going to be able to buy the lone wolf shooter theory on this one yet. Now I'm also, I've heard the Jews did it. Let's deal with the Jew theory. Man, the Jews have space lasers, and the Jews blow up pagers in people's pockets. When the Jews do things, they set up entire shell companies and factories to manufacture working pagers with explosives in them. And then they wait a year and a half and they detonate them when no one least expects it. And then they have a backup plan where everyone's walkie-talkies are rigged to blow up when they don't trust their pagers anymore. The Jews don't turn some deeply disturbed young man in Utah and have him jump off a building. If the Jews had done this, oh yeah, you stacker, I'm not buying right now because I'm out of work. But I am very much watching. I might be selling silver because I'm out of work, which I hate the idea of selling silver. But if you've got to sell silver, now's the time to sell. I consider this all-time highs on silver. I know it's not. I know the all-time highs are $50, but those 2 times it hit $50 were so anomalous and so brief that I just don't count them. And so I'm looking at this as a de facto all-time high in silver. So I wouldn't be buying a huge amount of silver right now. Yeah, I gotta do more YouTube stuff, Isaac. But there's a really good chance that this price holds, that this is a floor, not a ceiling, in which case you will have wished you were buying at this. But you never want to do anything for FOMO. You never FOMO. You know, fear of missing out. You never FOMO. Uh, so I would be cautious with the silver stacking right now. I wouldn't stop silver stacking, especially if you've got, you know, years of dollar cost averaging and you know, you've got a set schedule you buy on. I wouldn't stop all doing that. Uh, but I wouldn't say, oh my God, the price is, it's going through the roof. Let me go quick buy some, because you'll get hurt. Because at some point there's going to be a pullback, and silver frequently, when it has these big run ups like this, then it pulls back pretty far and it cools off for a while. So if you buy at a high, you might be stuck for a while. Uh, but silver is not an investment anyway. Silver is a savings account. So yeah, do what you want with all that. Uh, so anyway, you're not going to be able to convince me the Jews were involved in this. When the Jews do things, they are extremely sophisticated, extremely well done. You know, the Jews don't jump off buildings with ancient old hunting rifles. Uh, yeah, and I mean, I just don't believe any government is behind things like this, because when governments want to kill people, they don't have to do it in the open like this. You know, the government, when governments kill you, they slip, you know, exotic forms of uranium in your coffee and they poison you, you know, Alexei Navalny style. Or they do what like North Korea does, and like they walk past you in an airport and wave a handkerchief filled with some kind of VX gas in front of your face. Uh, yeah, you have a heart attack. The government doesn't kill people like this. I know, you know, we all like the Manchurian Candidate and, you know, MK Ultra, and there's certain amounts of truth underneath all of those, but it's not how governments function anymore. Okay, Les says Benny Johnson reported the shooter does have a transgender boyfriend. About 6 hours ago, it was reported by Benny Johnson that the shooter does have a transgender boyfriend. So, you know, all of the original reporting was true. That this was a transgender inspired event. Uh, maybe the shooter himself wasn't transgendered. But he was shooting because of transgender. Yeah, I hadn't. This is the first time someone had put a name to this source for me. ETS. You know, Les saying that Benny Johnson is reporting it is the first time someone has put a. So it is out on the mainstream media as well, not just gay. My grandson had a birthday party this afternoon, and so we had a very big family gathering as his 1 year birthday party. It's my daughter's son, and he's the first boy on my son-in-law's side. Thank you, Bob. So it was a big deal. A lot of people showed up. They put a lot of effort. It was a great party. So I have been blessedly unplugged all day long. Uh, I I, uh, I haven't been immersed on this stuff, but I would love to tell you my grandson's name. Uh, he doesn't have my last name. I can't imagine that there would be any reason why I couldn't tell you his name. He has the greatest name ever for a boy. Uh, uh, Sometimes his parents are in the chat, but I would love to tell you what his name is. Let me say this. Uh, uh, he don't like pilgrims. Pilgrim. Buckshot. Buckshot would be a good name too. Uh, They named him Isaac. Nice. um, no, but he has a great name. He has a great name for an American man. He's either going to be president or a serial killer. With a name like that, he doesn't have any other options. He's high high ceiling, low floor on that boy. Yes, Mark. Yes, I didn't say it, Pilgrim. But yeah, that is his first and middle name, not his last name. I wouldn't tell you his last name, but kind of fun. Kind of fun. Uh, doesn't like me yet, but he will. Just wait, he will. Uh, oh, Les lost some grandsons. I don't think I knew that. They're named John and Dylan, or it was a grandson named John Dylan. That would be a horrible thing. So, what's it mean? And am I even qualified to tell you what it means? Of course, I'm not qualified to tell you what it means. Uh, yeah, what comes next? I got what came next after September 11th. It's humiliating now for me to think back about what I was doing. Uh, you know, arguing vociferously for the Patriot Act and all of it. You know. Uh, but this was a significant moment, and things are not the same. You know, I don't. Yeah, was it as significant as 9/11? Probably no, because 9/11 for those of us who remember life before 9/11 and after 9/11. Uh, oh, Lance Corpetrin brings up a good point. We might need to dig into that. Uh, everything was different after 9/11. The government was organized completely different. Society was different. We embarked on 2 decades of wars. 9/11 changed the world. This isn't going to change the world, but it is going to so. If you ever worked with J.B. Weld, uh, I've never had. Uh, uh, I've never had good luck with J.B. Weld. I've never gotten it to work for me. Some people swear by it, but with J.B. Weld, you got those two different parts, and you mix them together, and one of them's the hardener, and one of them is the whatever the hell it is. But the more hardener you mix in, the faster the reaction takes place. The uh, Isaac likes the smell of JB Weld. The Charlie Kirk assassination was hardener. It vast swaths of the American people, uh, and it's going to make any kind of compromise extremely difficult. Okay, Matt Habir is telling us that the rifle is a Mauser M98K rebarreled and rechambered. The stock looks like the one for the modern Mauser M18, the cheap modern iteration of Mauser. Okay. So to me, that implies. Okay, so like this is. What do I think about this? To me, this strengthens the uh, terrorist cell theory in my mind, because we've actually got a very inexpensive, probably difficult to track rifle that could be bought with cash. He was probably able to get it. God forbid he got it some gun show somewhere. We're going to hear about the gun show loophole for years. Uh, uh, or maybe this is just something someone had sitting in their safe somewhere and he had access to it. It doesn't really tell you anything. Matt's saying you can tell from the bolt that the action is the M98K. It is just kind of a weird rifle, in a country overflowing with AR-15s and affordable bolt-action rifles right now. No, Isaac, 200 yards is a very doable shot, especially with a Mauser with a scope in 30-06. I mean, you could take a brand new shooter to the range for the first time, and in the course of one range session, you could have them making 200-yard hits with that setup. It wouldn't even be difficult. That is incredibly doable. I talk about this all the time. Most of you know this already. In the Marines, when I was in the Marines in the 90s, we shot 500 yards with iron sights with a 5.56. Semi-automatic AR-15, rack grade M16A2. No, he was aiming. Now, what I did hear today was that Kirk was probably wearing a vest, and it was probably a pistol caliber vest. I doubt it would have been rifle caliber, but it could have. And that the shot hit and deflected upwards, and it caught his neck. I could do that with my horse stuck in my crack. Because I will say this: a 200-yard neck shot would that's a much smaller target. And why would you aim at the neck anyway? I mean, that's not a shot you would ever take. So I'm assuming he was aiming center mass. When I first heard about it being a neck shot, I assumed he aimed center mass and he just had his elevation off, which is why they tell you to aim center mass, because you don't have to worry about your elevation, especially with a 30-06. I was saying it was a direct impact. Then I'm assuming that 30-06, didn't expand. He was probably using F, and it did a tiny hole right through. But yeah, this was not a professional. I'm sorry, a professional hitman doesn't. This was a propaganda event. Look, it was done in the middle of the day at an event of supporters, timed with a transgendered question. This was designed for maximum effect. This was a leftist terrorist group. Okay, Isaac, I know you watched the video, and I'm sorry that you've got that image in your head. I really don't want the images. I had heard that that someone was saying it didn't look like a 30-06 wound. But this is what leftists do. This is especially communist and socialist. They go for these big splashy propaganda events. Spoken like a true engineer, ETS. A professional hitman does not dress in black while lying down on a white roof. I just think this one is going to be exactly what it looks like. Some dumbass kids have been consuming too much communist bullshit on the internet, and they've been LARPing revolutionary for so long they started believing their own bullshit. Uh, and I'm not going to say they got lucky. You know, the thing is, this kind of attack is so easy to do. This is an easy attack to pull off, and the cost is a couple of crazy young men and a rifle, and you at least have to consider going forward. Who's Mike Shelby? Uh, uh, Going forward, you at least have to consider about doing events outside of fantasy LARPing bled into reality. You know, this does have an impact. You're not a coward. Yeah, I've heard that a bunch of the guys who do these sorts of things have all announced tour schedules. Hey, Mike Farmer, and none of them are backing down, and I appreciate that. But you're not a coward if you start factoring safety into your events. I think doing outside events is probably not an option anymore. It just can't be. There's too many roofs, and you know, you can take some dumbass to the range for a few hours and get him to be able to make a 200-yard shot with a 100-year-old rifle. A 98K was in service in the 1890s. That's how far back that rifle goes, a 98K. That's why it's called the 98K, because it was adopted in 1898. It was barely in the I shouldn't say barely, but it was one of the first military rifles designed completely around smokeless powder. Uh, Hey, Mike, we were just talking about that. It looks like he threw the rifle off the roof before he jumped off the roof. Uh, and there's some damage to the rifle that maybe backs that up. I know Isaac has said he's seen video where it looks like the kid was throwing the rifle off the roof. But to me, it sounds like maybe someone else was there to pick up the rifle, because it was found abandoned, and it wasn't found on the scene. It was found later in some woods around the neighborhood. Milo Yiannopoulos. I haven't heard that name in a while. I will be interested to hear what comes out of Milo Yiannopoulos' mouth these days. That is an interesting young man. No filter on that guy. Okay, if he texted it, that's where they found it. They found it wrapped in some bushes, wrapped in a towel in some bushes. If that's where he left it, I guess I just didn't see him pick it up when he ran off. So where I picked up the video, what I've seen of the video was him running to the corner of the building and making kind of an impressive jump to the ground. I was surprised he didn't break a leg. And then he picked something up off the ground, but I thought it was a bag. And then he took off sprinting. And that's all I saw. So I just didn't see a rifle. But that doesn't mean there wasn't one. I wasn't trying to, it was a grainy video shot from far away. So Lance Corporal Veteran talked about comparing where we're at to the 1850s. Wow, someone took an attempt on Andrew Tate's life. Why would you make an attempt on Andrew Tate's life? That doesn't make any sense. Well, Milo is openly gay. He doesn't. I heard at one point that he had this, I don't know what to say. I don't believe in gay. I don't believe that people are gay or not gay. I believe people do gay things. And if you're doing gay things, you know, you're gay while you do gay things, and while you're doing gay things, you're getting sucked farther and farther down the gay continuum, and sex is a very powerful drug. But if you don't do gay things, you're not gay, in my opinion. So I don't believe in a natural homosexuality. I believe that's a warping uh, uh, of, the right order. But yeah, when he had his first run of fame, he was very open about being a flamer. Where was I? Oh, 1850s. Lance Corporal veteran. I don't see what he said last in the chat about it. So, as you all know, famously, I don't know if you're fans of history. Well, was that old Norm Macdonald joke? Uh, he said something like, I don't know if you guys are history buffs or not, but yeah, no, if Milo is, I mean, I always liked Milo. I just like men in particular, and he had a lot of testosterone. I mean, yes, he was a flamer, but he just wasn't scared. He would say what needed to be said, or at least what was, if it went across the back of his mind, it came out the front of his mouth. Okay. But I haven't heard from Milo in years. Uh, uh, yeah, Matt, in range TV. I have publicly come out in support of in range TV a number of times. I think Carl puts out some of the best gun content on YouTube. Uh, and I always thought that, if we were going to be intellectually honest, we should engage his gun content as gun content, and not as he generally kept his views out of it. You didn't know his politics. Now, I am convinced. I can't back this up. Uh, but years and years and years ago, before I ever saw In Range TV, I was watching a documentary about polyamory, and I'm pretty sure he was in it. And I'm pretty sure that he was in a polyamorous relationship with a trans man, a man pretending to be a woman. It looked very much like it to me. I know, it was someone claiming to be a woman that was highly suspicious if that was a woman, and then two dudes. And I am 99% positive that one of the dudes was Carl Kassan in that documentary. Now, here's someone saying that doesn't he have a trans partner? I'm pretty sure he does. Uh, uh, and Carl's big thing is, uh, Mark's, I think he's being sarcastic. Second Amendment for all, 2A for all. And I've actually gotten to interact a couple times on Reddit. Back when I was on Reddit, I have since gotten off Reddit because it sucked up too much of my time, and they pissed me off. And yeah, he is surrounded by John Brown gun club leftists, and I am at the point where I can't I can't just ignore the foolishness anymore. You know, I haven't worked all this out in my mind yet. Yeah, Matt is pointing out we're not necessarily facing chubby pallid gamers. These people know their stuff. Uh, Carl in a very limited capacity, but he's an extremely good shooter inside his capacity. Now, shooting is like one of the less important skills in warfare. Uh, and I love shooting and I love guns, and I think we should all be good shots and we should all be trained. But the big skills in warfare are courage, determination, and being able to stand watch, being able to walk patrol, being able to carry 50, 60 pounds for miles at a time, explosive running and jumping, and those are actually the skill discipline, being able to work in a team, understanding hierarchies and being able to function in hierarchies. These are all those skills are actually more important than being a good shot. Leadership, and being able to lead and follow. The basic infantry skills, we talked about this recently. The gun culture has gotten sort of seduced uh, by the special operations culture and by uh, uh, competitive shooting culture, uh, and that's not a bad thing if it's kept in its proper perspective. Those aren't the skills that win conflicts. Though that is a skill that is helpful in winning a conflict, but those aren't the skills that win conflicts. Because the level of shooting that's required to 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 prevail isn't, like we saw with this shooting on Thursday, isn't hard to acquire. You know, we're not, we're not doing a whole lot of close quarters CQB. Uh, Not a lot of this running and gunning where you're shooting at 25 yards, engaging multiple targets, uh, tactical reloads, all this stuff. That is not what we would be facing. There would be, being a good hunter would help. Any veteran will tell you, and I've had combat veterans tell me this, and I've never seen. I was never in combat, so I'm speaking. But my experience in the military kind of backs this up. That it's long periods of extreme boredom punctuated leading seconds of sheer terror. Uh, uh, so I don't think we need to be scared of these people in an armed conflict. We do have to be scared of. I should know scared. I'm sorry. No, wrong word. We never need to be scared. Fear is a killer. Yeah, hurry up and wait. Matthew's been there. Hurry up and wait. Uh, yeah, logistics and communication are huge. Night vision, men. Night vision. There's this big thing going around now that the AR-15 is dead. Gun companies are going out of business. And yeah, I think there is some market saturation that's going on here. It's just part of a business cycle. Uh, Waiting is an MOS. Uh, the AR-15 has been so popular for so long. It's just the market's probably saturated for a little while, and that's just the business cycle, and it's no big threat to our freedoms or our culture. Uh, it is time for everyone to start thinking about night vision. I've actually said this for a while. I've talked about this in the past, but night vision is just so expensive, and I am not familiar with modern night vision options. I need to get spun up because it's so expensive. It's been so far out of my ability to even think about. Um, but he who rules the night rules the fight. Uh, it's an old cliche, but it's a true one. And if you can shoot and move at night and the other guy can't, you win. That's why Firewatch is one of those skills that are essential. That's why uh, that's what's so tragic about us not having active militia training anymore. Because yeah, we can all go out and we can all be pretty good shots and we can ping steel at 300 yards. But just being able to stand a fire watch is this crucial skill set. There was this whole unit in the Revolutionary War. This is kind of a big moment, uh, and it was sometime around right before or right after Valley Forge. Uh, but these British rolled up on and they knew where this colonial unit was, and they rolled up on it in the middle of the night and were able to amongst the pickets fix bayonets. They never fired a shot. They just charged with bayonets, and they killed hundreds of guys in their sleeping bags or whatever they slept in. Uh, and the pickets, the fire watch, just dropped the ball. And it was one of those major defeats going into Valley Forge that uh, uh, walking in the woods at night with nods without tripping is a freaking skill all its own. Mm. I spent a lot of time with the PVS 7 Bravo. That was what was getting used when I was in. And it was a monocle, but it was in the center, so both eyes were covered, and then you had the tube down the middle. Uh, and I thought it was a highly effective piece of gear. Uh, I know there were some allegedly some problems with depth perception and everything. Uh, now it was limited field of view. You didn't see a whole lot, and shooting with it was interesting. We didn't shoot with it a whole lot, so I'm not sure how I would have done if we'd had to. I mean, we did shoot with it some, but just not much. And we weren't ever, we didn't have to qual with it at all. It was just a little bit of familiarization training, and I think we were using tracers too, which you normally we normally wouldn't shoot tracers too much, but we do it when we had night shoots. Uh, Now, I spent a lot of time with early thermal. The tow missile, which was my main MOS, uh, had a thermal sight on it this was the late 90s. Mind blowing sight. It was big, it was chunky. I think it weighed 40 pounds. It had to be hooked up to the Humvee, to power it. Uh, but you could not sneak past it. You couldn't. I mean, it just saw everything. Thermal, at least that thermal, and I'm sure it's only gotten better since then. Unbelievable. I found. I've told this story on the channel before. Uh, yeah. Watch. Like I said, Firewatch is a skill. We. I won't go. I don't want to bore everyone with the whole story, especially since I've told it before. But there was this level of sniper back then called stay platoon. They're not full. They weren't full snipers. They weren't the full blown, Marine Corps crazy snipers. But it was like There was more than DMR too. They weren't just designated marksmen, and they were like a battalion level asset. And they had ghillie suits, and I can't remember what their rifles were. But we rolled up on one of their. They were out in the field training one time. They were out there in their ghillie suits, like an LZ, kind of overgrown LZ, and they had the guy in the back of the truck with the binoculars trying to find them out there, and I had the night sight turned on, and I was just scanning the field with the thermals, and these guys were in ghillie suits, and their rifles were wrapped. And the only thing exposed was the muzzle of their rifle. But I could still see every single one of them because the muzzle of the rifle was glowing. It was this perfect red circle that was glowing in the middle of the woods. It was clearly, a sniper. And their staff sergeant came down and he saw what I was doing. He said, "Hey, we want to fail them all because he said, if they pass this, they get to come out of the field, and we want them to stay in the field for another week. Can you point everyone out to me?" And I could just, there was like 14 of them or 24, I can't remember. There's something with a 4. And I just went, here, 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 here. Walked everybody, and you just can't hide from thermal. It's very, very, very difficult. I shouldn't say you can't hide from thermal. That's not true. But you seriously have to know because it works so differently than regular, visible light waves. If you have access to thermal, in my opinion, now I'm sure there's some issue with battery power. Back then, they actually had to have a cooler on it. It actually had a little tiny air conditioner on it. That was always like clacking in the background because they had to cool it down enough. Guns Coast to Coast says, "I got a 10K challenge. Nobody has beat the thermal yet." Very hard to beat thermal. And like I said, this was back in the 90s. This would have been like 1999. It's one of the last things I did in the Marine Corps before I got recalled after September 11th. The problem, Matthew, is even with the mud, is like the mud will let heat off at different. So the mud will get heated up at some point. Yes, the mud will work initially, but like once the mud adjusts to your body temperature, once the mud gets to the temperature of your body, it's not doing anything at all for you. It's the same thing. Now, what will defeat thermal is something that's kind of like stood off. Okay, so the problem with the solar blankets, yes, the solar blankets block you from the thermal, but the guy with thermal's like, "Oh, look, there's a solar blanket out there." I mean, you can see that level of detail. Okay, it's thermal doesn't work like, oh, there's not a direct heat source, so it doesn't see anything. Like when I would look out there with that thermal sight, and again, this was a big thermal sight. It had a cooler on it, but this was the 90s, so that was 30 years ago. But I could just look at the forest and see trees and see leaves and see the texture on bark. Okay, it's not that if there's not a heat source, you don't see anything. You still see details. It is a little bit like a photo negative, but everything's got some heat on it, and everything's letting heat off. In the middle of the night, now this was the desert, so obviously that was really, really hot, and so I'm sure it's letting heat off all night long. But you could see the texture of sand at 1,100 meters. I read a guy's name tape on his camis one time. Okay, so nitrogen blankets may block thermal, but then what you're seeing is the outline of a nitrogen blanket. Like it's not a natural shape. You're going to look at it and say, "Oh, look, there's a guy in a blanket." So yes, you have obscured the features of that dude, but you're still seeing a guy in a blanket. So ghillie suits did work. The thermal didn't see the ghillie suit. Uh, Now, like if your hands were exposed, it would have shown me the hands, but that muzzle, and you obviously there's ways around that. I'm not saying but that muzzle gave every single one of them away. The only thing exposed that I could see was the muzzle, but it glowed so bright red. Our thermals on that site were red, uh, uh, that it was just like a beacon. Uh, it was just like a beacon. So I'm a big fan of thermal. I don't know what battery life is like these days. Uh, uh, like I said, with our thermal, if I looked at someone who was in camis, I could see the camo pattern. You would see the different colors of the camo pattern because the different colors let off heat in a different way. Like I said, I read someone's name tapes one time. Uh, uh, yeah, I don't know what to do about drones. Drone attacks, I just don't know. Uh, because someone's going to start putting guns on these things. I don't care what the FFA says, or FA is it it's FFA. Uh, uh, People are going to start putting drones on those things. They're going to come in. Yeah, Mark. Now the thermal I had was the highest end thermal there was in the '90s. It was high end thermal. Uh, and we used it on the tow missile, so we were using it out to 3,000 meters or whatever it was. That I think it was 30. It was a long way that tow missile would shoot, and that thermal would see all that way out there. And it was absolutely amazing, the things it would do, and you could see. And uh, yeah, but yeah, they're going to weaponize those drones. They're going to come up from over the horizon, whatever that is. They're going to be coming in at even cheap drones, even if they just fly them straight into your head. You know, these things can move 50, 60 miles an hour, and bam, you've got traumatic brain injury from just an impact from one of these damn things. Uh, Now, honestly, I don't know how expensive a drone that could do that would be. I mean, that might be prohibitively expensive to be killing someone like you or me. But if you were taking out a high value target, it it'd be a cheap way, just and you don't even have to be line of sight. I'm sure you could use the drone's camera to fly it in. Uh, and zip it right in there and just crash it right into somebody's face and hope for the best. I don't know what drone disablers would be. The drones Ukraine is using are less than $1,000. Hummingbird of unaliving. Wes is in the chat. Hey, Wes says, how you doing, sir? So yeah, the we were talking about Carl over there at InRange TV. You know what this shooting has done? This assassination. Uh, it has hardened the battle lines. Now there's no way for me to justify supporting InRange TV and Carl Casado because he's on the other team. There's no way for us to pretend now that like there's uh, uh, a public square. There's two halves. There's two sides. and we can't cross those picket lines anymore. Yeah, I used to agree with them, 2A for all, because you know if you accept the idea of the Second Amendment, uh, guy flew a drone into my hand while I was trying to catch it for him. This does sound like a very West S event. The crap hurt like hell, and it was tiny. Uh, when everyone first started talking about disarming transgendered and banning guns for transgendered, uh, my first thought, and this is still my first thought, is absolutely not. That's a terrible idea. That is stupid. Because once we have a list with some undesirables on it who can't own guns, that list is going to keep growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. And every time something horrible and tragic happens, hey, Buddy Bear's here. They're going to keep putting a new category of people on that list. And gentlemen, you and I are not very far down the list of people who will get added. And yet, now I have to say, well, maybe that doesn't matter anymore. Maybe I can't worry about that even more anymore. So I don't know where I'm at on that. I'm too good looking to not be on the list. On one hand, I'm thinking we don't even want to start going down that road, because the very first thing that happens is, pro-life veterans get put on that list. And Obama was already, that was that big scandal during the Obama administration where they hijacked the Department of Homeland Security and said that the biggest terrorist threat in America was pro-life veterans. To this day, I don't know if pro-life veterans have perpetrated a terrorist attack. I'm sure there's something stupid that's happened somewhere. So on one hand, I'm like, well, we should not ever start down that path. But are we too far down a different path to where that path doesn't matter anymore? Are we just better off, like Buddy Bear just said? We have to stop pretending like we're fair and just be honest and say, no, I'm sorry, you're crazy, and you don't get guns. I let it go out. But if that happens, actually, you know what? I agree, Matt. You're right. I still don't think it's a good idea, because the Carl Casadas of the world aside, there's just not that many of them that are trained. There's not that many of them that are willing. Okay, so here's something. Leftists don't start revolutions. Revolutions start by a populist uprising that gets corralled and taken over by liberal reformers. And then the liberal reformers set up a regime that can get taken over by hardcore leftists and weaponized against the populist uprising. The liberal reformers are our enemies. They are the effective ones. They are the ones that build the benign police state that's only going to go after criminals, and if you're not guilty of anything, you don't have anything to fear, and this is just temporary. And then Stalin and Lenin take that over. Here's a little known fact about the Russian Revolution. Stalin and Lenin and the Bolsheviks were almost inconsequential to it. They had almost nothing to do with it. And they were wrong almost every step of the way till the very last minute. So, the Bolsheviks aren't going to come marching through town with their AK-47s. It is going to be it's going to be the Clintons of the world, the Schumers, the Pelosi's. At some point, you and I are going to get so fed up. Actually, both the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution, this is fascinating to me. Both of the violent periods of those revolutions were kicked off by women. In the French Revolution, I think, and both cases, it's called the Women's March. In the French Revolution, the king had moved his family out of Paris, and they had gone to the palace at Versailles, which back then was like 10 miles outside of Paris or something. I don't remember. And these women got all up in arms about it. Now there's some conspiracy theories that some other nobility were involved, because there was this one guy called what was his name? It was the king's cousin, and the king's cousin was hoping to supplant him. I can't remember his name now. And so it's possible anyway, these women march all the way to Versailles, storm the place. They're trying to kill the queen, and the only way they can calm everybody down is if the king agrees to take his whole family back to Paris. And from that point on, the king and queen are prisoners. They do escape briefly for another period, and they run for the border of Austria and they get caught. Something very, very similar happens in the Russian Revolution, where the women have organized this march, and the communists and all the radical men are telling them, no, don't do this. Now's not the time. And these women go out there and riot and kick the whole damn thing off because everyone's starving to death. The radical leftists don't ever get these things started, because radical leftists are batshit crazy, and everyone around them knows it. And they're really stupid, unappealing people who have autism. Evildoers fighting against tradition. I detect a Protestant joke on the way. I think Mark is already typing a Protestant joke. So, it's really easy to get up in arms about people like this Tyler Richardson. As an engineer, I might have a bit of tism. And they are a threat. They can destabilize. They can make things worse. But they're not the ones who march through first. That's you and I. Unfortunately, it's the populist uprising that gets co-opted by liberal reformers. We get angry. We're hungry. We're poor. We ain't got no work. It's cold. There's been a terrible war. All of our sons are getting killed. And we finally stand up, and we finally go to throw off the yoke of our oppressors, and our oppressors morph and bring in a worse oppression. In both cases, the French and the Russian Revolution, and the Chinese Revolution, actually, a far worse tyrant came in and took over, and the people were far worse off. We don't need to let a knee-jerk reaction to a stupid, crazy leftist cause us to start signing our own death warrants. And yes, while I was sitting here, I've been reaffirmed in my belief, no, banning transgendered people from owning guns is a bad idea. That will backfire on us. The liberal reformers will use that to co-opt our populist uprising. And then the very people we didn't want to have guns will have all the guns because they will take over the institutions from the liberal reformers. So I'm glad we could get my mind right on that. Bob Noctis is in South Carolina. Bob, I am about 10 minutes from the South Carolina border as we speak. Of course, that's a big, long border. So is this a John Brown moment? No, this isn't a John Brown moment. First off, John Brown was not a good man. John Brown was a murderous terrorist. Now, he happened to be a murderous terrorist who was right about one issue, and that's slavery. But he came out of some terrible, terrible fights, I think in Missouri, where they were doing home invasions in the dead of night, and they were torturing people and killing them just on rumor and innuendo. You know, John Brown was a hate-filled, crazy person who was right about slavery. And by the way, if the enslaved people had risen up and gotten guns and, you know, thrown off the yoke of their oppression, it would have been a righteous fight. Don't get me wrong now. But what John Brown was doing initially wasn't even about slavery. I mean, it was technically, but it was just this political fight. And he was a crazed, murderous terrorist, and he got all 7 of his sons killed. I think they let one of his sons live, who was just young. All right. His movement wasn't effective. What year was this? Someone tell me what year John Brown invaded the Harper's Ferry Armory. I don't even think he was an accelerationist. If anything, he might have slowed things down. But yeah, no, he was a murderer. 1859. Thank you, ETS. He was a murderer. He was a terrorist. He was a torturer. He definitely killed innocent people. There's no doubt about it. No, Guns Coast to Coast has been to the Harper's Ferry Armory. I didn't know there was anything still there. And I don't even think he was that sympathetic of a figure at the time. I could be wrong about that. But so where is this Lance Corporal veteran, if he's still in the chat? I appreciate his patience. Brought this up a while ago. You know, where are we at in the 1850s run up to the Civil War? I'm not sure the first Civil War is a very good corollary for where we're going through right now, or where we're at. I'm not 100% sure what would be a good corollary. You know, one of the big differences, actually, that's not true anymore, is it? Yeah, one of the big issues at the time was the very clear, distinct geographic segregation. The Mason-Dixon line was a real thing. The vast majority of everyone north of that line felt one way. Vast swaths of everyone south of that line felt another way, and there was no moral compromise. We're not as I mean, we can all look at the map of the counties, the way the counties vote, and there's that sea of red and those little bits of blue, and it could maybe feel like we have a geographic. Search Christofascism on YouTube and see what the left is preaching about us. Huh. ETS, that's an interesting Christofascism. I feel like I've heard that phrase, but I don't know where or how often. Uh, the Duke Ferdinand analogy is an interesting one. But like even in my little old county here, which is deep red and very rural, we voted the AR-15 into Congress here. This is Andrew Clyde's district, and his campaign signs, the picture of the AR-15 is bigger than his name. If you're riding down the road and see an Andrew Clyde sign, the very first thing you see is an AR-15. We literally voted the AR-15 into Congress. Even here, we're like 72-38 type stuff, 78-30 or 20, it's 72-28. There's still significant portions of the population in one of these, mountain congressional districts where we're just not as segregated as we were during the Civil War, where 98% of everyone in each place felt one way. So, where are we at in the 1850s? If we were going to take this run up to the Civil War as being a corollary, I don't think we're quite to the Missouri uprising stuff that we were just talking about with John Brown. I don't think we're there yet. We haven't seen that level of violence yet. I can't remember what that was called. It may have just been called the Missouri, but that was pretty brutal, and pretty widespread and pretty big. So we haven't gotten to anything close to that yet. The BLM riots wouldn't be that yet, I don't think. I would go so far as to say that might be the next thing. That if you want to look to the Civil War as the roadmap for what we might be dealing with, the next thing we might be dealing with is whatever the hell that was going on in Missouri. I wish I could remember the name of it now. It's like, I feel like it just wants to come out the front of my face. Yeah, what Wes is talking about, the thing between Kansas and Missouri. Bleeding Kansas, ETS is saying. That sounds familiar. That's probably the next thing to look for if you're going to look at that as a corollary. So the Duke Ferdinand thing, for those of you who, I don't know if you're you're fans of history, that was the crown prince of the Austro-Hungarian Empire who got assassinated in Serbia, and kicked off a chain of events that culminated in World War I pretty quickly. it wasn't like, okay, that happened and then the war started, but that happened, and the war that was coming was then kicked into high gear. Uh, Austria made some demands. Serbia didn't meet the demands, but then they really couldn't meet them anyway because Austria was just not. Austria was going to invade. Uh, was it Serbia? Uh, uh, there are some similarities though. The Archduke was assassinated by, I think his wife was killed too, by a young man who uh it was kind of not accidental. They were trying to kill him, but he had like sped away and they thought they'd missed him. And then as the car was like turning around to go another way, it just happened to go past this kid who was part of the plot, but he wasn't supposed to be part of the main plot. He was like a lookout or something, but he saw him like stop to turn around and he had the pistol in his pocket and pulled it out and fired in the car, killed both of them. Uh, Archduke Ferdinand was a younger man. There was a lot of kind of hope built up around him. He was considered a reformer and fairly capable. Oh God, it was a 32. I didn't know that, Mark. That's interesting. So there are some similarities you could draw. But obviously you're talking about oh wow, the wife was pregnant. Yeah, he was supposed to be kind of like a kind of a good, decent family man. He wasn't like this crazy, immoral, wild, drunken partier. Uh, yeah, it was a tragedy, much like this is. Obviously, we don't have all of the issues they had in Europe at the time. There was all of these secret treaties in Europe, and all these countries had all these various intertwined treaties. That would this treaty would trigger this, and that treaty would trigger that, and 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 everyone's treaties got triggered all at once. Uh, but I do think the Germans were kind of to blame in that one. I think the Germans could have reined the Austrians in, but they really, really, really wanted to get in on the colonial game, and that meant they had to kick the shit out of some of the other European powers to make them give up their colonies in whatever subsequent peace agreement there was. That's just my take on it. Then. I've been wrong before. I could definitely be wrong again. Mark's going to blame the Russians because if there's anything Mark dislikes as much as a Protestant, it's an Orthodox. I made that up. Actually, no, because the Austro-Hungarians were good Catholics. Well, they were Catholics. So, to sort of tie a bow around the Kirk stuff, be not afraid. I don't think any of you are. We need to. I don't even know what to say about the horrific tragedy of a 31-year-old young man with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old being shot on the street. What's wrong with Protestants? Ask Mark West. You won't like the answer. The answer is everything, all of it, all bad. He don't like none of yous, none of us, because I think I'm still technically a Protestant, even though I'm a Torah keeper. I'm still a what is that word I just learned? Sedevantivist. Uh, yeah, I saw a picture of the young woman. She does look like she's a very attractive young woman. Uh, uh, so yeah, we should be focused on this young family. I've been very very encouraged by the support they've received. Uh, this could be a moment of hopefulness. Setting aside the horrific tragedy of what happened to Charlie Kirk, the reaction itself has been so vociferous and so as a Torah observant Lutheran, I only have about 95 beefs. 95 beefs. I got that. Nice. Uh, hey, Vulgar Display of Truth is here. Vulgar Display of Truth. These little intramural fights are very fun, as long as they stay fun. Intramural fights. Uh, uh, this could mark a turning point. I've been saying for a while now uh, that I felt like there was a turn. You know, that things were getting better, that people were getting vocal, that it was getting harder to ignore us. Uh, the left really screwed up shooting this man. Uh, that's an interesting observation that they might have unleashed this mama bear who is never, ever, ever going to be mollified. That's an interesting take, Wes. Uh, if they take this beauty queen and turn her into a crusading warrior, you harmed my family, you shot my husband, you brutalized and terrorized my children. Yeah, Bob. They could have actually set themselves back decades. Uh, uh, yeah. Charlie was to the left of me. Uh, he was pretty far right. Yeah, he was pretty unapologetically right, but he was definitely to the left of me. I mean, I don't think hardly none of us should be voting. Uh, I don't think Charlie was talking about restricting the franchise as much as I would. I don't think he was going to restrict the franchise at all. Uh, I mean, he was definitely a conservative. There was a large gathering of the Maori tribe in New Zealand performing the haka for Charlie. Okay, that was New Zealand. When someone had explained it to me, Bob, I had thought it was in Hawaii and that it was the Samoans. But yeah, Charlie Kirk was not the craziest right wing guy in the world. He was conservative, he was right wing, but he was definitely a reformer. He wanted to conserve what was here, and he just wanted to dial it back a little bit. He's not some crazy guy like me who doesn't want women or non-Christian men without grandsons to vote. Because that's my standard. I wouldn't, if you weren't a Christian man with a Christian son who's had a son, I wouldn't allow you to vote. I don't care how good of a man you are. If you don't have a son who has a son, I don't think you should vote. I can justify this. I know we had someone who was at Landon, maybe, who was talking about having 3 daughters. Doesn't mean Landon's not smart. Doesn't mean Landon's not moral. It just means that of all the ways to try to make sure only non-crazy people vote, that's the one that nets you the most non-crazy people. Yes, you absolutely lose some good voters like that. You lose the fewest of the good voters and exclude the most of the crazies that way. Uh, you know, I don't like property tests. I don't uh, like citizen. I don't like any kind of test at all. Uh, I don't like the tax thing. You the poll tax. I don't mind a poll tax actually, uh, but I don't like the landowner thing, Matthew, because I've known some really stupid landowners and I've known some really good moral renters. I happen to be a landowner, so I mean that I'm not speaking from. Uh, self interest here. I would qualify under the landowner rule. I don't think that one excludes enough of the undesirables and includes enough of the desirables. We need something that excludes undesirables. You know, obviously Christian men, if you've lived long enough to have a grandson, you've obviously learned a few things. You've been successful enough to do that. If you've raised a Christian son, then you've been able to pass on your culture. You haven't been such a crazy asshole that your son doesn't want anything to do with you or your lifestyle. And if you have a grandson, because if you meet those other two qualifications, you're going to be a little older, maybe a little too cautious, maybe a little too, well, let's spend the money now. But if you've got a grandson and your name lives on, then you still have a stake in this game and you're focused on the future. You're not as maybe focused as much on the here and now, because your grandson, your name's gonna survive. You have a stake in what comes next. I think that gets us as many of the desirables as possible and excludes as many of the undesirables as possible. So, and Matthew says, as a father, I've met some really stupid fathers of sons. Yeah, me too. I mean, I've been a really stupid man. And I don't have a son who's had a son yet, so I wouldn't qualify yet anyway. Yeah, finally, someone agrees with me. Buck99 says that's not a terrible idea. But that's a little bit of an aside. I've talked about it on the channel before. I think Buck99 is the first one to have ever agreed with me on it. Stupid is in DNA. Okay, so Buddy Bear brings up an interesting point, and this is what I call the Starship Troopers idea, defense, the Starship Troopers. He says, a line from the movie The Patriot, which is a great movie, one of my favorite of all times. One of the, I only cry at Mel Gibson movies, and this is one of the Mel Gibson's movies I've cried at. The line from the movie is they go to a bar. They're trying to recruit fighters for his new militia unit. And his son, the Heath Ledger character, like, what are we doing here? These are terrible brigands, cutthroats, thieves, murderers. And Mel Gibson's like, yeah, those are the kind of men we need. You've all seen it. So he says, if you fight to preserve it, you should get a vote. I am somewhat, as a veteran, sympathetic to that idea. But I'm still, God save King George. Yeah, and they all threw the knives at him. But I'm not ready to make that exception. And I call this the Starship Troopers defense because that was the whole plot of Starship Troopers is service gains you citizenship. That if you serve, you get to be a citizen and vote. I don't think that would net you enough voters to really, especially in our country, in our all volunteer force. We're talking about a couple 100,000 people a year joining the military. I think there's like 600,000 active duty service members at any given time, kind of filtering in and out. Uh, so, and yeah, like Wes just said, in the enlisted ranks, yes. When I served, it was like 80% or 90% of the enlisted ranks were uh, conservative. The officer ranks was very, very different because the Clintons and then the Obamas, uh, they were very, very deliberate about corrupting the officer corps. Very deliberate about corrupting the officer corps, uh, and we have seen the results of that over the last 2 decades. Uh, oh, I may have gotten the Patriot quote wrong. I thought it was at the tavern, or maybe he said it twice. But yeah, maybe the Frenchman was giving him shit in the swamp about what had happened at Fort whatever that was. Uh, okay, yeah. Lance Corporal veteran, I think you're right. Uh, I think you're right. At the tavern, they said, "Are we in the right place?" And that's when it said, "God bless King George." And then when they got to the swamp, Heath Ledger was there, and Heath was like, "We don't need these kind of men." Uh, and Gibson was like, "These are exactly the kind of men we need." I kind of disagree with that sentiment. Uh, oh yeah, if you look at the definition of fascism, Wes, first off, it's Italian. Uh, Heinlein had some interesting ideas on who could vote and govern. That's interesting, Dean. I'd like to hear those. Uh, Mussolini develops fascism, which is nothing new. He didn't develop it. He just renamed it. The basic tyranny. But if you look at how Mussolini defines fascism, it's modern liberalism is all it is. It's a the government taking control of the economy to further national interest. That's all fascism is, which is just socialism. And Mussolini was a socialist. Mussolini came out of socialism. Hitler was a socialist. He came out of socialism. That National Socialism was the name of the damn party. Shalom, tradesman. Uh, so yeah, the guy that wrote Starship Troopers, his name was Heinlein. I'm sorry. Yeah. If you've ever read the book, it's a very interesting book, and I'm assuming Buddy Bear has read the book. He's a smart, educated man. Uh, oh, all right. Good night, Buddy Bear. We appreciate you, sir. Uh, but absolutely, uh, fascism is just socialism, with a nationalist twist. Uh, you know, Hitler, instead of you know, pro- uh, Hitler substituted in the German people for the international industrial worker, and he substituted in the Jews for the bourgeoisie. But other than that, there was no difference. Absolutely no difference between Nazism and socialism and communism. Hitler and Stalin were two peas in a pod. Couldn't have picked them out of a lineup. They were so alike in everything they did. And Mao was even worse. Mao was actually just a disgusting human being on every level. Uh, I mean, like literally, figuratively, hygienically, uh, morally, just degenerate piece of trash. But anywho, man, I may have run out of steam. I don't normally run out of steam this quick. But it's been a little bit of a week. Oh, I know what I wanted to talk about. Terry Phillips. If anybody remembers from our last live stream, there was a New Zealand dad who I'm a little cautious about talking about because I don't know all the details. Yeah, it is old age. I'll be 50 here in a few weeks, Wes. And Terry Phillips, I think I remember his name correctly, had been living in a fat bottom Betty cigar. Les says I'm a baby. Oh, Les, I need to talk to you. I need to fix this chainsaw. Thank you for saying something. I'll try to remember to shoot you an email. I thought I had one problem, and I went to fix that problem, and I had a second problem. And I kind of need the saw. Not kind of need the saw. I was out cutting the other day, and I got my big saw as stuck as I've ever had a saw stuck. I'd never had a saw stuck that bad. And I thought I'd done it right. You know, I'd cut a relief cut on the top, and then I went underneath, but I hadn't made the relief cut in the top big enough, and so the saw still got pinched. And I had to get someone with an excavator. I was cutting on someone else's land. Like I put I got the jack out of the van and I was cutting fulcrums. Well, I tried to make some wedges and that wasn't working. I didn't have any steel wedges on me. I did have 2 splitting mauls, so I tried to use one of the splitting mauls as a wedge and that didn't work. Like, I mean, I just had this thing stuck. So I had to go get the landowner, who was fortunately my daughter's father-in-law. He had a Mini X, so he came down with the Mini X and picked the log up for me, or I still might not have had my big saw out. But normally I always have 2 saws, and I could have just, cut it out with the small saw. But the small saw is busted right now. I guess someone's talking about the Fat Bottom Betty cigar, which I have never heard of, but Swamp Yankee says it's a good choice. These are just seconds. I buy them in blocks of 20. They're $40 for the block. Black powder. Well, yeah, we got that Mini X, and then he pulled the log out for me, and we sawed it up right there, hanging off the front of his Mini X, and it was much easier. Made me want a Mini X. Of course, I wanted a Mini X before that too, but all right, we're losing the tradesman. Good night, sir. Been falling asleep on the couch. Well, that's hurtful. Damn, brother. Oh, I'm kidding. I will look for one of the fat bottom Bettys. The little cigar store I go to has a brand called Cheap Ass Cigars, but these are cheaper. So, and I'm just not an ass man. Nothing good ever came out of an ass. Think about it. It's a bad joke, but anyway, no, Terry Phillips, father in New Zealand. Don't know the whole story, so I'm a little trepidatious about talking about it too much. But it just resonated with me because this guy was in some kind of custody dispute with his ex-wife, and he just went feral. He just took the kids and ran and was living in the bush for like 3 years. He was breaking into some stores when he, couldn't feed, when he needed some extra food. And he broke into a store one day last week. This was just recently. Well, the week before he'd broken into a store, and it was a big deal because they got him on video and it was like the first time anyone had heard anything out of him in a couple years. They've been living in the bush for like 3 years. Uh, yeah, vulgar display of truth. It's displaying a vulgar truth. And then this week they caught him, and it ended up in a firefight, and they killed him. He's dead. Is Wes out too? Wes, good night, sir. Thank you for dropping in. And I was very disappointed. You don't know what all was going on. The guy may have been a raging asshole. Who knows? Terry Phillips, Lance Corporal veteran. He was a father in New Zealand who took his kids and ran out into the wild and was living off the land for about 3 years. Look it up. It's in New Zealand. Terry Phillips. Whatever the motivation was, whatever the details are of what was going on, whether he was right or whether he was wrong, you have to admire the sheer audacity and the man's dedication to his children that was a lion move. The man took the kids and ran, and he kept them alive in the bush for 3 years. He didn't bow. New Zealand, vulgar. And you have to admire his dedication to being a father, his willingness to stand up against the system. This was a courageous, audacious man who just displayed some signifiers of masculinity that I deeply admire. I've been in ugly custody disputes twice, and I backed. I didn't make that choice. Now he's dead, and his children are going to be with this woman full time now, and I'm alive, and I have robust, good relationships with all of my children that I was so worried about losing. But you still have to admire the sheer audacity of the man. He just, he put it all out on the line. He risked it all. He wasn't scared. I'm sure he was scared, but he didn't let that fear stop him. It is entirely possible it was an unwise choice. Yeah. You see, vulgar hasn't seen his daughter in months because of bullshit with his ex. So, we might find out that I actually have some friends in New Zealand, and I reached out to them about that case, and I asked them, look, has there been any indication that maybe he's, a pervert and, sexual abuse or anything? And they said, no, there's been no indications of anything to that. So far, there's been no hint of anything like that. But I was very disappointed to hear that he'd been shot. Now, it's possible he shot first. He did have a gun. He did wound the officer who first found him, because they cornered him. They'd kind of had him pegged. But I was disappointed to hear he was dead. I was pulling for the man. I was hoping there was going to be some way that situation could get resolved where he could continue to be, because clearly the man was a dedicated father. All right. You don't do that just to get back at your ex. Takes too much energy, too much time, too hard. You do that because you love your children and you want to be around your children. Whether or not it was wise, whether or not that was the best decision, it was 100% clearly a sign of how dedicated he was to being a father. And I admire that. And I admire his sheer courage and audacity. There should, like someone just said in the chat, there should be a place for men like that in this world. Someone should have said, holy hell, in a world with all, what does everyone say? Yeah, fatherlessness epidemic, fatherless epidemic. Men have to, well, you know what? Here's a guy who did, a man who did, and he's dead, bled out in the dirt. Someone should have found a way to solve that situation. Laws are changing. There's this, I just read an article, and we should actually do a video on this. In Kentucky, they dropped the divorce rate something like 80% by just passing a law where they assume split custody, where they assume 50%. The law is the judge has to go into the case assuming 50-50 custody. And that very fact alone cut divorce rates by 80%. To me, that is one of the most astounding statistics I have ever heard. That tells you more than anything else about the divorce epidemic in this country, and the way to solve it. And I need to look into that more. I just read the one article. Apparently, a bunch of other states are looking into the same law. And if you reduce the divorce rate by 80% in this nation, you fundamentally transform the relationship, the nation on a basic level. The breakdown of the nuclear family has been the main goal of the left for 100 plus years, 150 years now. Yeah, that's the other thing. 50-50 results in no child support since time between the parents is equal. Tells you everything you need to know about divorce. So if you reduce it by 80%, you roll it back to 1960s levels, I think that's where that would take you. Fundamentally transform everything about the nation, the economy, everything. It just affects everything. Stable families are the foundation. That's why it's called the nuclear family. I think, maybe not, but I think it is. Because it's a building block. Oh yeah, and think just what you do to young men, to boys growing up with their dad, and young women growing up with a father and knowing how to interact with a man. So much of the horseshit we see going on right now is that these young women were raised without a father in the home, and they don't know how to interact with a man, and they don't know how to work with a man and live with a man, or how a man, what makes a man tick. Girls learn as much from their fathers as boys do. I have no idea how the feminists let that pass, Mark. It is a Kentucky, so despite their governor, Kentucky is a pretty conservative state. I don't know how that jackass keeps getting elected. Yeah, no fault divorce needs to go away. I mean, obviously, I think the default setting should be that the father gets the children, that if the mother wants to leave, she has to leave the children. But, this 50-50 thing seems like it works too. So why make it harder to achieve a victory, Let's go with this 50-50 split thing and then see if we want to go for more after that. Let's take a page out of the liberals' book, incrementalism. Let's go for what we can get and keep going past that. We don't have to have the one grand. So I just saw this recently. I didn't know this was a thing. Uh, Apparently during World, and it makes sense now that I read it, but I'm just not that smart. Uh, During World War II, the Japanese had this strategy. They had the Japanese named things the most amazing stuff in the world. Operation Floating Cherry Petal of Death on, Typhoon Winds of Fury. They just have great names for everything. And they had this strategy that basically was this this big epic, one-time battle. So they were always trying to force these really big battles, and then their plan would be these great big epic battles, and they would win these great big epic battles, which was the exact opposite of the American strategy of island hopping and commerce raiding. America was taking all these strategic islands and boxing them in and cutting them off from uh, uh, resources and stuff, and we were doing the opposite of the big grand battle. Uh, so this grand epic, one time conclusive battle strategy is a loser. But you know what? It's very appealing to a certain kind of to my brain too. It's appealing to my brain too. Uh, oh, is it Tom Phillips in New Zealand, Dean? Thank you. I was thinking it was Terry, but you're right. It's Tom Phillips. Uh, I appreciate you finding that. Uh, Tom Phillips, not Terry Phillips. Forgive me. It's been a rough week for fathers. Between this Matt Richardson, the shooter's dad, Charlie Kirk being a father, and then this Tom Phillips in New Zealand. It's been a rough week for fathers. Uh, tragic, hard week. One of my foundational beliefs is that no one will ever appreciate. Now, this is probably because I'm a father and I'm melodramatic and myopic and self-centered, but no one will ever really appreciate fathers except for fathers. No one really understands what we do and how we do it and what it costs us and what the rewards are too. Now, don't get me wrong. This is not being a father is a wonderful, 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 rewarding thing. But so much of what goes into it, stays internal. You know, our failures are very big and noticeable. We do the Japanese thing, and our successes are quiet and internal, and they go unrecognized. Uh, and that's just the job. That's just part of the job description. Uh, and the better you are at being a father, possibly the less people will appreciate it, because they won't even notice. Just everything runs smoother because you're around, and people don't give credit for things that didn't happen. You know. Uh, but anyway. Where was I going with that? Anyway, so no one really, uh, Father's Day, and you get the tie, and I've never gotten a tie for Father's Day because I don't wear ties, but that's the stereotype. Oh, Dad, here's your tie, and Father's Day's all about you making everyone else feel like you love them and appreciate them, and if it was really Father's Day, you would spend the day at the strip club or something similar, but if a father ever ducked out on Father's Day to go to the strip club, oh my God, this is the worst father in the history of the world. Uh, but weeks like this, when you see these fathers being killed, or these fathers just being destroyed by the actions of their sons. Uh, it what's the right word? I don't want to say it highlights. Maybe that is the right word, but it brings to the forefront the the physical dangers of the job and the moral and mental devastation that can be wrought on a man who takes this risk of having children in this system. When they take your children away from you, or when they corrupt your children and turn them against you, or when all of your your hopes and dreams for this boy, this Matt Richardson guy, we might find out he's a terrible dad. We might find out this is Matt Richardson's fault. I don't think so. Looking at the little bit of circumstantial evidence in front of us, sounds like this was a decent man who, I'm sure he had his failings like we all do, but he didn't deserve to have his son do this. Uh, we might not ever know how this kid got so twisted that he's shacked up with another dude pretending to be a girl and shooting innocent people on the street. But it's doubtful that his dad, who stayed married to his mom and worked a job and raised 3 kids, it's doubtful he did anything all that terrible to this kid. Uh, who knows? We'll find out, or not. Well, if there is anything terrible, we will find out. Uh, you know, who'd that kid go to? He went to his dad. When that kid, I'm assuming all of this, by the way. I mean, obviously, I don't have any information you don't have. But when that kid woke up from his whatever induced haze and realized what he'd done and what he was faced with, where did he go? He went to his father. That tells you something right there. That this just couldn't have been the worst man in the world. Because, this kid, what do I do now? Who normally fixes things? Well, let's go talk to Dad. And you know what? Dad may have not known what to do, but he did something, and it ended up being, as hard as this is, the right thing. Uh, uh, because as bad as this situation is, if the kid hadn't turned himself in, it was only going to get worse, unless you're of the mind that he should have died in a hail of gunfire and not, burden society with his court case. But no, I mean, this of all the possible outcomes to this situation, this is the best one. This is the one that allows the kid repentance. This is the one that allows the kid to try to at least amend his soul before he goes into the afterlife, before he faces whatever comes next. Obviously, I think I know what comes next for him, but Mark will tell you I'm crazy. Uh, but heavy, heavy, heavy burden for a man to bear, and he's going to get blamed by most people. Most people are going to, if they give any thought to this guy Matt Richardson at all, it's going to be like, oh, that's the guy who screwed his kid up so bad he shot Charlie Kirk. And it's just probably not accurate. It's probably not true. This is the man who bled internally while his son turned down a dark path and then was forced with this almost impossible dilemma where, the boy comes to you and says, I've done this horrible thing. What do I do now? I'm assuming he said, what do I do now? He didn't go tell his dad for no reason. And it's, do I turn my boy into the police? They're going to kill him. They're going to literally, they're going to seek the death penalty. Do I tell him to run? I mean, do I hand him a gun and leave the room? I mean, like, what's the best thing to do in this situation? It's just horrific. The worst victims in all this obviously are. I will not paint Charlie Kirk as a victim. Charlie Kirk was heroic. He died doing something he believed in desperately. He died wearing a bulletproof vest so that that he had assessed the risk and accepted the risk. And his legacy is secured. He has a son. He has changed the world. Charlie Kirk is not a victim. It's a tragedy that he's gone, but he left the world victorious. And I believe in the what's the word? Oh, they make fun of us. They call it like deep sleep or something. I don't believe that the soul goes straight to heaven when you die. I think the believer's soul is in some sort of stasis until the second coming and the resurrection. But when Charlie Kirk enters his reward, he's going to enter it victoriously. He is going in as a conqueror. I don't think there's consciousness though, Buck. I don't. Yeah, I like purgatory. I knew you were going to say that, Mark. I almost said it first. No, because I don't believe that there's any refining of the soul in this state. I don't believe there's any consciousness. And by the way, this is not like some deeply held belief. If someone disproved me, it's not a big deal. This is just what I think is most likely based off of the text. When it says the dead in Christ will rise, that implies to me that they're not. The dead in Christ will rise and meet him in the air. That means they're not in heaven with him right now, as far as I can tell. But that's high school level theology. It's not a big deal, one way or the other. If they're all in heaven, you know what? There is something that would indicate that martyrs are in heaven. So if you wanted to say Charlie was a martyr, you could convince me then that his soul is conscious and is present in heaven at this point. That's a different debate. It's not even a debate. It's just an interesting idea. One of my foundational verses is I believe it's Deuteronomy 18:29, but I might be making that up. But it says something around the lines of the revealed things are given to you as a heritage, and the secret things belong to the Lord. So if it's not revealed, it's not ours to worry about. Charlie Kirk is not a victim. His wife is a victim. His children are victims. Charlie's parents, which I've heard nothing about. I haven't heard word one about Charlie's parents. His parents would be a victim. All of the people who would have been impacted by Charlie are victims. But after you deal with the people right around Charlie who were victimized, the next victim was the shooter's family. They've lost a son. This is like having their son die, and he is likely to actually die. I mean, there's every likelihood that this kid faces the death penalty, and in my opinion, should. By the way, I'm not against that. I think the default setting for murder should be death penalty. I don't. I mean, if you murder someone, I think you should face the death penalty. Fair trial, jury of your peers, preponderance of the evidence, the whole nine yards. But if you're convicted of murder, you should face the death penalty. So I'm not saying that it's unjust that this kid is probably going to die, but they have lost a son, and then on top of that, they've lost a son in this way, or he's done something horrific, and their whole family has been thrown into suspicion. This Richardson family has been absolutely been victimized. Not as much as the Kirk family, but not much less. And that is not to show sympathy for the shooter. That is not to lessen what has happened to the Kirk family. That is not to raise the Richardson family up to the level of the Kirk family. But it is still true. This family has experienced a tragedy as well, and a very unique and once different tragedy that not many people are going to have sympathy for. Allegedly, I don't know if this is true or not, but someone told me that like Elon Musk gave the Kirk family a shit ton of money. Not that makes it better, but everyone is outpouring sympathy and love and support and concern for the Kirk family. And yeah, a leaf fell in the forest. And if anyone's going to give much of a thought at all to the Richardson family, it's going to be, what did those crazy people do to have this pervert son do this horrible, violent act? And that at least deserves some sympathy. And this moral conundrum that this father faced about what do I do for my son, to me, is just one of the most overpowering conundrums. I won't call it a moral conundrum because, from the 30,000 foot level, the moral choice was very, very obvious. Yeah, the right thing to do unequivocally was for this kid to turn himself in. That was the right thing to do. That part isn't morally fraught. For a father to have to come up with that moral calculus in this moment where this son who, almost certainly had been the greatest stress in your life for 5 or 6 years now, you worry about this kid, you sweat over this kid, you're probably praying over this kid. If anyone came to you and said, magic wand, I can fix one thing in your life, what is it? This dad probably says, this kid. And then the kid comes to you and says, Dad, I've done something horrible. What do I do? Set aside the fact that that this is a sheriff, that he's law enforcement, that he knows what the risks are with the legal system, and this kid probably facing the death penalty, and then this man has to resolve this situation for his son. It's just an unbelievable, towering situation. I don't even know how to describe it. I just don't have words to describe it. I just can't even. Any word I think I could come up with would just minimize what it seems like, and I can't put myself in that position. I just can't do it. So, what's the old song? That old song, Seven Spanish Angels. And at the end of the song, I love that song, but it's very, very melodramatic and a little silly, but I still love the song. At the end of the song, it's like, say a prayer for Lefty too. And it kind of, it gives Lefty's side of this, or at least what Lefty is dealing with afterwards, So, say a prayer for Lefty too. Not telling you not to pray for the Kirk family, obviously, but this Matt Richardson is dealing with some stuff, and he's still got 2 sons, 2 younger sons. Those 2 young men probably have to deal with some stuff going forward too, and of course the mother. I my focus is on men, and I don't have that. I think that's good and right because men are so underserved and ignored and uh, in our cultures. But yeah, this mother also, her heart has to be breaking. But I don't have as much to say on that. All righty, man. I don't feel like this was an uplifting, encouraging conversation, but it wasn't an uplifting, encouraging week. But who knows? Uh, all things work to the good to them that love the Lord. And so our job is to love the Lord and look to see what good could come out of this. Not that this was good, not that this was fated, not that God wanted this to happen so that he could do good. That's not how that works. It's just that, oh, thank you, Dean. I appreciate that. He can make good come out of it. And it is my prayer that he will. Mr. Becker, we appreciate you. Isaac, if you're still in the chat, thank you. Les, thank you. Les emailed me to make sure we were going to do this tonight, and he definitely spurred me to make sure that I got on in a timely manner. Bob, it was nice to meet you, sir. And I'm sure a whole lot more. Buck, thank you for agreeing with me about voting rights. And OETS, thank you, sir. It's good to see you too. And we will see you all probably next week. I think we'll probably have a live stream next week. Hopefully, I'll have a video next week. But hopefully, we've got some more uplifting things to talk about. Man, we appreciate you. Thank you. Have a good night, and God bless.